Lucky number 7. All right.
Well, thank you, and I figured I'd come early to meet the brush, you know. I'm the only one that's milked the cows already this morning.
That's right.
Well, we welcome you to Washington, and you know, want you to understand that what you do is important. Getting around and talking to the members of Congress does make a difference. So your presence out here is important. As you know, we have not had an easy time getting anything done around this place the last few years, and you know, we're lucky to get the bill through that we got done. It wasn't perfect, but it could have been a lot worse. It could have been nothing. You know, it's just as you all, I'm sure, are aware. I mean, I've been in politics for 40-some years. And I have never seen anything like what's going on this year, you know. And I don't know anybody that has any idea what's going to happen. You know, it's maybe Jesse Ventura is some symbol of where we're going here. I don't know. But people are upset, you know, and I think rightly so. You know, they just don't think that things are working. Especially average working people don't feel like their problems are being listened to. They don't feel like what we're doing is helping their situation. And so they're just kind of fed up. You know, in my district, Bernie Sanders got 63% of the vote. You know, you know, I think apparently he will not be a candidate. I think a bunch of those folks that voted for Sanders are going to vote for Trump because they're upset with what's going on. They don't want anybody that's been part of the deal. Near as I can tell, I'm still surviving this because one of my old-time political aides told me that I was Trump before Trump existed. Because I tell my people what I think, and I tell them, you know, whether they like it or not, you know, my best judgment and what I think needs to happen, and sometimes that is not politically correct, but I think people appreciate that, you know, at least in my part of the world they do. So we'll see what happens with this whole presidential election. I think the House will get closer. I think the Republicans will lose seats. I don't think it'll be enough that we'll get back in the majority, but I think it'll tighten up significantly, and that puts me in play a lot more than I am now, because right now they don't need us. They've got enough people that they just kind of ignore. The few of us that are left, you know, in the middle, you know, the original Blue Dog group, I'm the only one that's still there. Way back when, and after this election, I will be the only, assuming I survive, I'll be the only Democrat in a Republican district in the United States. You know, I've had the most Republican, there's been 2 of us, and the other one, Gwen Graham from North Florida, Bob Graham's daughter, who you see in the Senate, she had a fairly Republican district, and they reapportioned her in the middle of the cycle, and she went from a district that was 55-45 Republican to 72-28 Republican. So she's not running this time. There's no way she can win. So what's happened is they've reapportioned these districts and made them so one-sided. They're either Republican or Democrats. And so the elections are not about the other party or worrying about getting the voters, you know, from the other party. The elections are about getting your voters, you know. The fight is like on the Republicans' side, it's within the Republicans, and the Democrats' side is within the Democrats. So what that does is it pushes our party to the left, the Republican Party to the right, I don't know how many times I've had people tell me, well, I'm working on some issue, and they'll say, well, you're right, but the problem is that I cannot look like I'm working with you, or I can't look like I'm working on that issue, because if I do, I'm going to get a primary, and I'll be challenged by the Tea Party or the Freedom Caucus or whatever it is, on the Republican side, and we have the same thing on our side. And now it's the Sanders people and so forth that are going over some of the more centrist people. So, and it makes it difficult to get anything done. The other big problem is the elimination of earmarks. And some of you guys that have been around know that I have done significant good in my district with earmarks that I've done over the years. But when Boehner got in office, he got rid of them. But that was the grease that helped us put bills together. Because, otherwise, a lot of members don't have a lot of skin in the game, and so they won't vote for something. But and these earmarks were not new spending. They just allowed the members to have some say about setting some priorities in their district, and then that helped, pass the bill. So it's made it much more difficult, and not only with transportation type bills, but also with the appropriations process. So the appropriators use that as well to get people on board with their different appropriation bills. And now they've got this other problem where the Republicans, because they have such a big majority, and because the Freedom Caucus is like 70 people, they are, throwing their weight around and getting them into positions that they can't untangle. Last year was the Confederate flag. Ken Calvert, who's the chairman of the Interior Committee, a friend of mine, and he had spent all day in committee doing his bill. Got to be midnight. They had going to wrap it up. They had put in 3 amendments that said, they were Democratic amendments, that said you couldn't have a Confederate flag in a veteran cemetery or in a national cemetery, whatever. And I don't know who or what, but some of the Southerners decided that that was not acceptable and that they needed to have an amendment that said it was okay to have a Confederate flag in any federal cemetery or any federal building and whatever. So the leadership sent the word down to Calvert right as they were ending up that night that he had to take this amendment and put it in the bill. He didn't want to do it. He thought it was a big mistake. He told the leadership people that, but they insisted that he do it, and so he did. They put it in the bill. By the next morning, the whole world had blown up. Everybody was on Twitter and just, and so the Republicans realized they had a problem. But at that point, the Southerners that wanted this, they could not vote to take it out. And the Democrats weren't going to vote to bail them out, and so the bill died. And they shut down the entire appropriation process and quit doing bills for the whole rest of the year. This was June 1st or June 28th or something like that. So they just waited till, didn't do anything, and then waited till the end, and after November, did an omnibus bill to keep the government running. It was basically like a CR. So a lot of the policy issues didn't get dealt with because, they were not doing their work down in the committees. So this year, they were going to have a new leaf, and everything was going to be different, and so they get going through the process. And this year was the energy and water bill, which is normally very non-controversial, Corps of Engineers and other kinds of water projects. And so came out of committee fine, got it up on the floor, and down in committee they had an amendment that said that you couldn't discriminate against anybody in employment. If you're a federal contractor and do federal work, you cannot discriminate against gays, lesbians, transgender, and bisexuals. And it failed in the committee, but they brought it to the floor, and it passed by a pretty good margin, 230 some to 180, whatever. so it got on the bill. So then they brought the bill up for final passage, and the Democrats were against the bill. So they were the ones that pushed the amendment. But they were against the bill because the environmentalists didn't like some things in there. So the Democrats voted against the bill, and most of the Republicans voted against it because it had this gay and lesbian amendment in there. And so it failed 110 to 300 or something like that. So now they're back at, they're trying to decide if they're going to just shut down the appropriation process again. Because they, Ryan, when he took over, said they were going to have open rules. When you have an open rule, that means that any amendment that's germane to the bill can be offered. They can't stop it, you know, and that's what happened with this amendment. So now they're trying to decide either they're going to shut down the appropriation process or they're going to go to closed rules, which means that their leadership will decide what can come up. And basically what they do with that is protect their members from voting for things that are going to cause trouble or be politically a problem or whatever. So we're not sure what they're going to do, but you know, and to show you how partisan this has got, I mean, so on the final passage of that bill, there were 6 Democrats, I was one of them, that voted for the bill. And that's what we have left of the so-called blue dogs. There's 5 or 6 of us, that's all that's left. At one time there were 50 something. So, and on their side, I remember when they used to have 40, 50, you know, moderate Republicans, a number of them more liberal than I am. You know, they're all gone. You know, there's like 3 left over there. You know, and so there is nobody in the middle to work things out. You know, I just tell them about the gay and lesbian amendment that blew up the appropriation process.
Well, but on the other hand, the whole Minnesota delegation voted for it.
No, I know. Yeah, it has no place in the United States for any kind of discrimination in employment for anybody. I don't care who they are or what. You know, it's just that time is over with. You know, I mean, that should be a no-brainer, and it should be a no-brainer that, you know, you're not going to have a Confederate flag in federal facilities. I mean, right? But some of these Southerners are in a different world. So anyway, so Betty is here. So we appreciate you coming to Washington and sharing with us and spending your time. It makes a difference. And I will wrap up, and unless you want to give me some advice or something I didn't talk about that you, I think I told you more than I know. All right, well, thank you very much.
Okay, well, yes, we are pleased to have Representative Betty McCollum here. She's been a longtime supporter, great champion for transportation, and she serves on the Appropriations Committee, which is very important. So hopefully she can tell us more about what's happening with the Transportation and Housing and Urban Development Appropriations Bill. So please join me in welcoming Representative McCollum.
Colin left, but you have to realize that Colin is rock solid on a lot of things, and transportation and infrastructure and working together on all that. As the leader, he's the dean of the delegation, right? And he's just, he's really been wonderful for all of us to work with, not only in Minnesota, but you watch people from the other side of the aisle come over and talk to him about issues and that. And farm to market, right? So ag, and his work on the ag committee and the way it intersects with transportation and making sure that Minnesota's economy and our farm economy can get farm to market is really important. So I just want to take a second to let you know how valued Colin really is, not only within the Minnesota caucus, but throughout the country. Well, I'm here to report that we had a budget deal, right? And it was divided defense, and it divided domestic spending, and it treated it with parity because we need a strong economy here at home, and we also need to be able to defend ourselves abroad. So that was a good way forward. We knew what the numbers were going into this session. The Republicans, you know, what goes around comes around. I remember being at a couple debates and Democrats in the House won't pass the budget. Now people are saying Republicans in the House won't pass the budget. Well, part of the reason why they can't get a budget to the table is they have a group of people who want to undo the budget resolution solution that we came up with, so we didn't have a government shutdown. And Speaker Ryan, in his infinite wisdom, said a deal is a deal, and we're not undoing it. So consequently, what happened, we didn't have a budget resolution come down from the Republican majority. So when Hal Rogers, who's the chairman of he's the Republican chairman of the Appropriations Committee, working with ranking member, Democratic ranking member leader Nita Lowey, we didn't have what we should have had in front of us, which is the allocations for each one of the individual appropriations bill. Now, we kept asking Mr. Rogers to kind of just go with the numbers that everybody had last time, and you know, call it even and move forward. For whatever reason, and we understand that it was some direction from the leadership, he did not want to or feel he could release all the allocations for the subcommittees first. So this is so to fast forward, what eventually started happening is we passed veterans, we passed defense, and we started passing some of the other appropriation bills, but we passed 4 of them, and those 4 we marked up at $1.5 billion more than those 4 bills had been marked up last year. So we were kind of like, hang on to your hats. I'm the ranking member of the Interior Committee, which is a lot of things important back home, our national parks, works with our tribal sovereign nations back home. We have 11 of them in Minnesota. It works on EPA for a lot of the water quality regulations that we're all coming together back around in Minnesota, you know, to move forward on making sure that we protect our water for future generations. So I kind of knew, you know, to use the term, I was going to get a haircut, and I did. Also has, my budget also has wildland fires in it, and we were all smelling smoke from the Canadian fires. We've been watching them out west, but we know that, you know, something could happen in Superior, Chippewa National Forest, one of our state forests, one of our national parks. Something could happen on private land and spread. And it's been a while since we've had a fire in Minnesota. There was a small one up in the Ely area back a while ago, but we're concerned about that. So my budget took a haircut. So when you start putting things together, and all politics is local, I spoke with the governor on Saturday, and he told me that he was going to be vetoing the tax bill because of the glaring error in it. And these are how these errors happen, right? I served in the Minnesota House. We used to get our work done on time, and we used to get our work done on time here in the U.S. Congress. When you don't get your work done on time, when you don't hand your homework in or your proof paper, right, for everybody, for the public to take a look at it, mistakes happen, and then you're somehow shocked that you got a failing grade. And I think the governor was right to veto the tax bill just in and of itself for that glaring error. But we also need to have a bonding bill back home, just like we need to fund transit and transportation and the highway trust fund here. Because if our, you know, and I'm older than some of you in this room looking around, so some of you who are kind of my age, if our grandparents would have sat on their hand and said, you know what, we're just not going to make the investment in the highway infrastructure system, we wouldn't have the system we have today. And then our parents' generation, you know, they did a few improvements here and there, but they really didn't build into the maintenance and the upkeep and everything else. And then I'm 61. Our generation comes along and kind of working with our cohorts who are a little older, we've really failed, and I'm using the royal we because I'm ready to do what we need to do, and all the proposals you put forward, and you've been wonderful back home, and making sure that, you know, you brought together a wide coalition to move the gas tax forward, talking about consumption tax, making it a priority that the whole state infrastructure gets built up. I'm ready to stand there with you, but there's too many people who, like, well, you know, I just don't want to spend the money because I'll be labeled as a spender. I want to be, and I'm proud to be a person who stands up and says, I want to be viewed as an investor. An investor in Minnesota, an investor in the United States, and investing in the future for our businesses, for our, whether it's ag, whether it's, I have 3M, whether it's some of the great manufacturing we're moving into next generation in Minnesota. We can't do that without you. And then let me say a word about transit, and I'll take a few questions. There's a few Eastsiders in here. I am really proud of the work that we have done in the East Metro. Because in the East Metro, if we're going to move forward a transit project, we have to bring 3 counties together, and those counties work with the municipalities in every single area that's affected. So when the East Metro, it looks like it takes us a little longer to bring something to the table to the legislature. We have thoroughly, Sherry, as you know, we have done our homework. But now what is happening with Gateway, there are 12 people. We know who they are by name, face. They know who I am. There are 12 people who are showing up at every meeting, whether it's Oakdale, North St. Paul, Maplewood, Washington County, Ramsey. 12 people that are showing up complaining about Gateway, not wanting those people in their communities, literally. When we have the business community, the municipalities, the counties, the state, the elected, and a lot of people who know we can't build our way out of congestion in 94, and business development, who are all ready to go with what I thought was a real great solution, and that people in the middle. We're not just putting more buses on the highway. We're not building light rail because the numbers are there, although some people still wanted to push light rail. We're coming up with dedicated bus transit, a model for Minnesota and for other states to look at. People went out and looked at what was going there. It protects the right-of-way, guarantees that there won't be expensive right-of-way when and if the tipping point happens for rail in the future, if it happens. If it doesn't, in the meantime, the other highway buses that aren't that they can go into that lane and switch in and out and pick up time for people getting to and from work. So we know when we come together, we can come up with solutions. And we need to stand up and be held accountable for not listening and working with people when those solutions are in front of us. And I wish the Pioneer Press would speak to more than 12 people. I wish they'd talk to the elected officials, to the nonprofit organizations, to the churches who have worked with us, mosques and synagogues, and with the community at large who knows that we need to be making smart investments in transit. Minnesota needs to do that, and we need to do that here in the United States Capitol grounds. So your work here is really important. I'm so glad that you're here. Margaret knows my door is always open, and just let us know what we can do for you. And I left a minute or two for a question. I do not have a crystal ball, but I will give you my best guess on anything. I'm a former teacher. I know what first hour's like. I'm not going to call on anybody. So I'll just go. Especially high school students. You got up early. You need that extra sleep. Well, thank you so much. I do mean this sincerely, because all the progress that we've had in Minnesota on transit and transportation particularly is all because of all the stellar work that you've done in building a magnificent coalition across business, private sector, community leaders, and with people all around the state of Minnesota. We wouldn't be in the places we are today with building what we have built, but you know so much more that's in our future to build. So I just want to thank you for being here and for holding us accountable. Thank you.
Okay, well, I think we're going to have a little bit of a lull before we have the next member of the delegation. So please, everybody, feel free to grab some more food and coffee, and we'll have another member shortly.
What's the thing going on tonight?
Yeah, I'll, make an announcement. But yeah, we're at a phone call. They're gonna shift here.